Hey guys, right, tonight we're going to tie a Zonker fly. Tying a ton of these lately. So, it's one of these guys, super basic. You can get as crazy or as simple as you want with them. They move really well, super easy to tie, colors are endless. So, let's get going. So first, in the vise, I have like a stinger, almost bass bug style hook. I like these because of the wide gape, and you get a lot of kind of dubbing buildup on the bottom of the shank. You'll see when we tie it. This particular one, it's a mustad. B10S works as well, really well, but the B10S shank is a little bit shorter. These mustads are a pretty good length. You can tie these on any kind of hook though. Don't limit yourself to just what's in the video. So to start, I've been using Vivas 50D gel spun thread pretty much on everything. I've been using white, super neutral, blends in with everything. So I'm just going to do a thread base all the way down just to where the bend starts forming. And we're going to tie in the first material, which is of course the Zonker. So this particular one, just white, black barred. This is from Hairline. Hairline is good for like a really consistent Zonker strip. Some of the other brands that I've used, the the hair sometimes, you'll get a bald patch mid strip, or the length of the hairs are all different. These are high quality. So first thing I'm going to do, this is a definite hack. So the very end of this strip is torn and it's kind of wrinkly. I'm going to cut it flush. Okay, so I got a nice fresh squared off end, and now I'm actually going to taper this before I tie it in. So there's nothing wrong with this if you just tie it in like that, but you'll see when you wet it, it doesn't go to a great point. It's pretty wide and thick. So I'm just going to lightly taper the ends of the skin. Okay, so you can hopefully see that. Just cut it to a point, and now when you wet it, it's a very sharp, pointy tail. Like, I tie these kind of with sculpin in mind, and sculpins have a very sharp, abrupt, tapered tail, and that's what you get with the taper. Okay, now to tie this guy in, so I like to measure the hide on the shank, and I go pretty much a hook length worth of hide, and I pinch it at the front. Take a minute here to really separate the hair so you get a nice clean tie-in. Okay, so I know it's hard to see, I shouldn't have picked white. I'll wet the fibers going forward so they don't get in the way when I tie it in. So first wrap nice and loose just to get it where I want. I'm pinching the tail. Now I put on a little bit of tension. It's another reason I like the gel spun, is I don't need a ton of wraps and I can really crank down on it. So I usually go about 4 or 5 wraps, nice and tight. Right at the back. So now that that's tied in, I bring the Zonker strip over, and I like to use just the hair clip, hold it onto the shank out of the way, and now build a little thread base in front of the Zonker to kind of really tightly hold it in there. good. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is tie our body. Body on these super simple. You could use chenille. You could use cactus chenille, UV chenille. I like to use dubbing. So ice dub pearl for this white one. I like to use red hue or just the standard pearl, which is the green. For this one, we're going to use the green hue. So I build a dubbing loop, say maybe 7-8 inches long. Tie that in right underneath, and I'm going to wrap it forward to where I want everything to end. So I go maybe 2/3 of the remaining space for a dubbed body, leaving some room at the head just for the head, which is going to be more of the white rabbit. So I'm going to take a medium pinch, I don't know, this much. You can play with it too. You can make it really thick, really thin. It's totally up to you. And I'm gonna stack these fibers so they're all kind of the same length. So one thing I really like about the pearl ice dub is the fibers are very straight. Some ice dubs kinky and short fibers. This pearl ice dub is quite long. These fibers are about 1.5 inches long, and they're dead straight. So more or less, they're all in line, and I'm going to throw this in the dubbing loop. Now once it's in the loop, I like to spread everything out. If you put too much ice dub, you just end up pulling it all out anyway. So the kind of thinner you get it, the more you're going to end up getting a usable amount in your loop. Otherwise you just brush it all out. Okay, so once you have your loop packed like you want it, just spin it. And now I hit it with the toothbrush. Once it's mostly brushed out, I'll kind of hit it with my Velcro. You could use Velcro from the get-go, but I find it kind of rips and tears a little more than you want. So the brush is the softer option. So now that I have my dubbing rope ready, I'm going to just kind of pinch everything to the side like you're wrapping a chenille. And I'm going to start right under where that zonker is tied in. And then I'm just going to do tight touching wraps, being careful to trying to keep everything neat and pulled back. We're going to brush this out once we're done anyways, but this can save you a lot of time. So I'm just going to wrap this touching turns up to about the 2/3 point. Once you start banging these out, you'll have your own points of reference to know when to stop, when's too close to the eye, and what you don't want is too little of a rabbit head, but at the same time you don't want too much of a rabbit head. They kind of look funny, so I find about 2/3 works. And again, if you do trap a bunch of fibers, which you can see they're matting down, it's not a big deal. Once we hit it again with the toothbrush, it's gonna it's going to come out like we want it. So that's about where I like it. I mean, I probably could have gone maybe one more, two more wraps with the dubbing, and you can also go back, unwind, and just put a little bit of space in between, but I'm going to just run this like that. So there's about a 1/4 inch left. So I like to really make sure I crank down on this loop. So I'll do a few wraps forward and then take it back and really crank it down. Last thing I want is to get this unraveled. Okay, so now I hit it again with the toothbrush. So forward and down. And then I'm just going to part it to the sides. So I want the ice dub going down, and because we took the time to angle everything back, it's naturally going to sit kicked on an angle going back towards the tail, which is what we want, because this is going to form our belly bottom of the fly. So now I'm going to bring the Zonker strip up and over, tied in the front, and you'll notice I advanced my thread and left a little gap between the ice dub and where my thread is, and that's to help tie this in and not have such an abrupt kind of chunk. So what I'm going to do is find out where my Zonker is going to sit, part it. Again, I just lick my fingers, use that to keep the hairs down. Do a loose wrap, pinch, and now I'm going to wrap back towards the ice dub. Just enough to hold it securely, and then now I'm going to come in and trim the excess. So I lift it 45 from the hook shank, put my scissors right up against my thread. My scissors are in line with the hook shank. Pull the hide and you get a bit of a taper, and now I can come back and tie all this in. Nice and tight. You don't want that Zonker strip coming off. So if you've had trouble tying with rabbit before, where you cut it off, sometimes you get a big kind of hump of material there, and it can make the next steps a little difficult. By holding the rabbit on a 45 and cutting it flush, it's actually quite tapered, and there's no step there. So now I'm going to wrap back basically to where the ice dub ends, and the remaining distance is going to be our rabbit fur head. So before we do the next dubbing loop, I like to put some flash in. This is Flashaboo Mirage 3333. So this is a mix of Opal Mirage and like a silver holographic. I like to take one of each, just one of each, because most of the sparkle and shine is going to come from that ice dub. This just provides like a nice lateral line and just a little bit of extra tail flash. So here I have one strand of each. I'm going to lay it on the side nearest to me and just come a little bit past the tail. Then I'll wrap it to the front, and then I'm going to bring it down the far side. And because it's a lateral line, I kind of like to go along with like the hide of the rabbit in the middle of the fly, and I'll cut that a little bit long at the end. So if your material's causing you trouble and it's in your way, lick your fingers. Just kind of give it a bit of a squeeze and a pinch, and it kind of tames especially the flashabou. So now for the head, we're going to use the same rabbit. If you wanted, you could use a different color. If you wanted two-tone, something different. Doesn't have to be the same, but I like them when they're the same for mine. So that's what I'm going to tie now. So we go another dubbing loop, again, maybe 7-8 inches. And then I'm going to advance my thread to the eye. So how much rabbit you put in the loop is going to vary depending on what size you're doing, how much of a head you're making. For me, I use these magic clips, and 3/4 of one of these or a full one is usually about enough. And this is the 2-inch model, so I'm looking at probably 1.5 to 2 inches of strips worth of fur. So I'll use the big magic clip to pinch the hide and then pull the fibers out. Get them all nice and uniform and cleaned up. This will pull any excess fluff out as well, so you're just left with good fur. And then I'll take the smaller magic clip and pinch the amount I want. So in this case, I'll do a full one. Now I can come in with my scissors, cut the excess hide. So what I'm left with is hide on and a full 2-inch clip's worth. So from here, I'll pinch the clip so I don't move it around, and I'm going to cut the hide off as close as I can. Sometimes you get super long fur and you're going to want to leave more room, but as you tie these, you'll be able to judge if you've got too much or it's too short or whatever. Alright, so now I'm left with just fur in the clip. Now I'm going to put the clip into the dubbing loop, and I don't go right up against the fly because I like to spread this fur out. I don't like just going right off the hide in. I like more wraps of thin fur than less wraps of thicker dubbed fur. It just looks cleaner. So I'm taking that 2 inches of fur and spreading it out nice and thin. Trying to get it even. So I don't know, maybe 3.5 inches. I've probably almost doubled the length by just spreading it out on the loop. And then now also I like to pull it nice and tight in the loop so I don't have cut ends that are too far out. I want this to be a pretty flowy head. Okay, so when it's where you want it, spin it up. And then again, I'm going to hit it with the toothbrush. So once it's picked out pretty good, I'll take my Velcro again and really get it picked out. So what I'm left with is a very, very fluffy brush, but it's also very thin. It's not densely packed into the loop. So I like to lick my fingers and I'll part it, pull it to the side. Much easier to wrap this way. And I'm not trying to pack it in super tight, but definitely touching turns. and then I'll preen it back as I go, taking it forward. Okay, so that's sitting right behind the eye. I've got maybe one thread wrap's worth of space, and so I'm going to tie the loop off 4 or 5 wraps nice and tight. And then I'm going to pull the loop back and then wrap forward over it again, nice and tight, and now I'll form a little head. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So now I'm going to come in with the crazy glue. Actually, first, if you crazy glue the rabbit head, sometimes you get a lot of glue in the rabbit, so a trick that I like to use, again, I'll lick my fingers and kind of mat down the fur. So the head's much smaller up at the front. Take the crazy glue, do about 3/4 of an inch, and I do it till I see little droplets. Not big droplets, but little droplets, so I know the thread's saturated. Take your whip finisher, whip finish, cut my thread, and don't forget about the loop that's still in there. Cut that as well. Almost done. So the last step, hit it again with the toothbrush. And there you go. Finished Zonker. It looks real puffy now, but as soon as it hits the water, it'll suck right down. And you get lots of movement from the fluttering tail, and you can leave the flash a little bit long, or you can cut it just past the edge of the tail. Up to you. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching.